You feel it before you admit it. There is a room inside you that others never enter. It is the room where your questions echo longer than most people's answers. If you have ever been told you overthink, if silence feels more honest than noise, if you leave conversations with more questions than applause, then this is for you. Not to flatter you, but to hand you a mirror. Because depth is not a brand. It is a burden, a discipline, and sometimes, if you are brave, a gift you choose every day. Let us walk through 8 small thoughts that quietly reveal a mind trained in depth. They are not rules or titles to claim. They are habits of attention. If they fit, you will recognize yourself with an uncomfortable clarity. You notice your first thought, and then you wait for the second. Most people defend the first thought as if it were a homeland. You do not. You recognize what psychologists call the fast system, the reflex that leaps to certainty to protect your ego from embarrassment. You let it speak, but you do not let it drive. You listen for the second thought. What if I am missing something? What would prove me wrong? Plato would approve. In the cave, the first thought is the shadow. The second is the suspicion that there is a fire behind you. The courage to hesitate is not weakness. It is the beginning of wisdom. You track your reasons the way sailors track stars. You do not merely state a position. You ask, by what map did I arrive here? You separate data from desire, evidence from identity. Bonhoeffer warned that stupidity is not about low IQ. It is the failure to take responsibility for one's reasons, to outsource thinking to the crowd. You refuse that bargain. You know that motives whisper louder than facts, so you examine your own. Am I defending this because it is true, or because it would be painful for it not to be true? This is not cynicism. It is intellectual hygiene. You are suspicious of easy villains, including the ones in your own story. Machiavelli is often misread as a preacher of cruelty. He is, rather, a cartographer of power. He knew that people prefer simple tales. Hero here, villain there. You resist that temptation. You sense that every conflict has a hidden economy of status, fear, scarcity, and miscommunication. When you are wronged, you look for your footprint on the scene, not to blame yourself, but to avoid the narcotic of moral purity. Deep thinking replaces outrage with analysis. It asks, what incentives produce this behavior? What pressure points hold this system together? And crucially, where am I rewarded for staying blind? You honor slowness as if it were a craft. Depth moves at the speed of digestion. In a culture trained to sprint, you walk. You have learned that attention, like a muscle, grows in the weight room of boredom. Nietzsche wrote, all truly great thoughts are conceived while walking. He did not mean cardio, he meant ritual. You understand that insight rarely explodes. It accumulates like stalactites, drop by patient drop. So, you read long books, revisit old notes, sit with difficult art, and allow silence to speak longer than your fear of it. This is not aesthetic posturing, it is training. You distrust the applause in your head. There is a trick that shallow certainty plays. It makes you feel righteous. It gives you a private stadium that stands whenever you say what your tribe wants to hear. A deep thinker notices that standing ovation and labels it what it is, dopamine, not truth. You ask, if the people who disagree with me were the ones clapping, would I still be convinced? You audit your convictions under hostile light. This is the move that turns echo chambers into laboratories. It is also the move that will, at times, make you lonely. But loneliness is cheaper than self-deception. You practice mercy without surrendering judgment. There is a form of intelligence that mutilates itself in the name of compassion, refusing to call harm by its name. You do not do that. You can hold two truths at once. The human being is more than their worst act, and actions still have consequences. The Roman Stoics called this discipline seeing the whole. You acknowledge context, the childhood, the poverty, the pressure, but you still name the wound. Mercy without truth is sentimentality. Truth without mercy is cruelty. You walk the narrow path between them. That is harder than appearing nice, but far more loving. You fear unearned certainty more than you fear being wrong. It is an uncomfortable confession. You would rather be corrected than congratulated, because you know how expensive ignorance becomes when it is armored by pride. This is the quiet courage of the lab notebook. Scientists do not win experiments, they learn from them. You treat conversations the same way. You change your mind in public. You collect strong counter-arguments like tools. This does not make you soft, it makes you anti-fragile. As you shed old certainties, you grow a spine that bends without breaking. You suspect that your shadow votes in every decision you make. Jung would say the parts of you that you refuse to own will own you. You have noticed this. You see how the hunger for admiration disguises itself as sharing value, how resentment dresses up as justice, how fear poses as prudence. So you keep a ledger of your shadow. You watch for the moment the voice of woundedness imitates the voice of wisdom. When you catch it, you do not shame it. You negotiate with it. You want safety. I want truth. How can we both walk out of this room with dignity? That negotiation is the difference between self-awareness and self-theater. Perhaps you recognized yourself in one of these patterns. Perhaps you recognize the edge you still avoid. If you did, pay attention to what happened inside your chest. Did you feel relief or resistance? Relief means your depth is asking for more oxygen. Resistance means your ego is defending its last fortress. Both are valuable signals. Do not look away. Here is the uncomfortable twist. Depth will not rescue you from pain. In fact, it promises more of it. When you think deeply, you will grieve what others ignore. You will outgrow rooms that once felt like home. You will see the machinery behind the curtain and realize that glamour is often an invoice for your attention. You will find that certainty is cheaper than honesty, and that most people buy it happily. And you will still choose honesty. Not because you are superior, but because you have learned a simple, severe truth. Reality collects its debts, sooner or later. Consider the way you use words like, I believe, I feel, and I know. Shallow minds swap them like loose change. Deep minds audit them like accountants. Ask yourself, what do I truly know, and how do I know it? What do I merely want to be true? Where have I confused intensity for accuracy? Where am I avoiding a small humiliation that is protecting a larger illusion? There is practical work to do. Set a daily appointment with slowness, 10 minutes with a difficult paragraph, a walk without headphones, a question written at the top of a page. What would convince me I am wrong? Make your mind a courtroom where evidence must speak before emotion testifies. Keep a ledger of predictions. Measure them against reality. Not to punish yourself, but to calibrate. Reward yourself not for being right, but for revising quickly when new information arrives. Curate your environment like a gardener. Algorithms learn from your clicks. Your mind learns from your calendar. Change either one, and you change your future. Follow at least one voice you disagree with, but respect. Stop rewarding outrage with your attention. Replace intellectual sugar with protein, primary sources, old books, long conversations that do not end with a scorecard. Depth is not built by inspiration, it is built by diet. Be ruthless with your language. Say, I do not know when you do not. It will feel like stepping off a cliff until you realize it is the only ground that holds. Ask fewer gotcha questions and more builders questions. Under what conditions would this be true? What problem does this solve? If this fails, where will it break first? This is how thinkers become makers, by interrogating reality with compassion and precision. And then there is courage, the most neglected instrument in the orchestra of thought. Many people can analyze, fewer can act on what they discover. If you see a truth that costs you status, money, or belonging, will you still call it by its name? Nietzsche wrote of becoming who you are. He did not mean narcissism, he meant fidelity, the alignment between what you profess and what you practice when no one is applauding. Depth without courage is a museum, beautiful, sterile, and irrelevant. Depth with courage is a workshop. Things get built there, lives change there. A final image. Imagine your life as a river. Shallow water runs quickly and loudly, tripping over every stone, foaming at the surface. Deep water moves quietly, carrying ships. Do not confuse volume for strength, speed for direction, or performance for substance. Your depth will not trend. It will not go viral in the ways that flatter your ego, but it will make you the kind of person others trust when their own certainty collapses. And that trust is a currency that does not inflate. If you felt seen here, do not perform it. Practice it. Choose the second thought. Check your reasons. Complicate the villain. Walk slowly. Distrust the applause. Hold mercy and judgment together. Fear unearned certainty. Audit your shadow. Build your rituals and protect them like fire in a storm. This is how a life becomes a lighthouse, not by shouting at the sea, but by standing, steady, in the dark, long enough for someone else to find their way. You do not need permission to begin. You need a first quiet decision, made without witnesses. I will live by reality, even when it offends my story. If you can say that, you are already rare. And if any of this felt like a mirror, there is a reason. The world does not need more cleverness. It needs people whose depth makes them honest, whose honesty makes them brave, and whose bravery makes them helpful. Become that person in small, repeatable ways. Let your thoughts be tiny. Let your integrity be enormous. When you leave this video, notice your next click, your next sentence, your next breath. Depth is not somewhere you visit. It is how you move. And if you move this way long enough, you will discover the secret that the loud never learn. The quiet mind does not need to win. It only needs to see. And seeing, truly seeing, is what changes a life.